No matter how good you are with this, in 2023, if you want to kick your portrait photography up to the next level, you have to get really good with these. And in this video, I'm going to take you through my secret sauce that I use to finish out my portraits and make them ready to print. Welcome to the channel, Hayward here. I am going to condense my portrait finishing process, what happens once you download the images into your computer, into 5 steps, and I'm going to throw in a bonus extra step at the end that shows you what I do in Photoshop, or at least the tools I use in Photoshop to finish them out, get them print ready, retouching. I'm going to touch on all of that. This video is an overview. Each one of these steps could easily be a video in itself. So if you want to see more information about anything I'm about to talk about, please let me know in the comments. I could consider doing another video, or visit my consulting page and we can schedule some one-on-one time to deep dive into anything you see in this video. Let's get started. Okay, step 1 is to triage your images to only accept the very best expressions. Yeah, this isn't a tutorial on how to do that. You're gonna have to choose that for yourself. But what I wanna stress upon you is not to waste time on images that are anything but your very best, right? You're gonna spend time on these images. You may be delivering them to a client. Why waste time on images that aren't your very best? Don't even show them. So triage, cut, cut, cut. Only select the very best images to move on down the process. Okay, the next step is to crop. No, you can't finish crop in your camera. You can get really close. The better photographer you are, the closer you'll get. But there are some issues with trying to crop in the camera. If you try and crop in the camera, you are predetermining your finished crop of your portrait. And I guarantee you, you shouldn't do that because you just don't know how it's going to be cropped at the end. I'll give you one example. If you're using a 35mm camera, either crop or full-size sensor, it's a 4x6 format. What if you're going to deliver a 16x20 wall portrait, which is a 4x5 crop? The word crop is right in there. You've got to crop it. So don't look at it as some sort of failing of your photography. It's another creative step along the way to finish your work. You can't always shoot the crop you see in your mind for the finished portrait. Okay, here's a good example of an image that must be cropped because it's not the way I intended it when I shot it. It's a fine image, but it's really not very inspiring. So until you do this. When I shot the image, I intended all along for it to be a very narrow crop, 2:1, or even 3:1. You can't do that in camera. You have to crop. Okay, the next step, this is a big one. You've got to manage the overall contrast. It's very, very important to control contrast to get portraiture that really stands out. Whether you want a lot of contrast or a little contrast, you have to manage it. And you can do that up to a point in your camera. If you're shooting in the studio, it's a little bit easier to control. If you're shooting outdoors, you're gonna have to kick your portraiture up a notch, manage your contrast. And that is, it's the contrast slider or the curves. You can do it any kind of way, and micro contrast or middle contrast or whatever you want to call it, things like clarity. There's several ways to manage these different things. I choose Lightroom. Okay, this is an image. When I shot it, I knew exactly what I could do in post with exposure and contrast. So in the camera, really doesn't look that great. This is the same image after I played with exposure and contrast the way I visualized it. You can see over here what I've done with the sliders. It's all over the place. Again, this has to be done to taste, but when you shoot your images, you have to know what you're shooting for and what can be done in post. Okay, the next step is something that the latest technology has allowed me to do, and that is manage the difference between my subject exposure and my background exposure. Once again, if I'm working in the studio, there will probably be very little work to do at this step. I might tweak it a touch. But if I'm working outside, and when I'm working my flash or reflector in comparison to my background, I have to have a visualization in mind of what I want to do with this image at the end and create an exposure that can be brought there, not necessarily finished there. Don't kill yourself trying to do something that your camera may not be able to do. We have got tremendous capabilities in the finishing of photography today. Why throw that away? There's no purist attitude that, oh, it's got to all be done in camera. That's silly, that's absurd, and you won't ever achieve your full potential thinking it all has to be done in camera. You can do so much with working with the exposure of your subject and your background today. Okay, this is an example of an image where I'm controlling the exposure of the subject and the background separately. Let me turn off the background exposure change. That is how it looked initially. When you look at the subject and all this stone on the ground, the exposure is too close. But I knew when I shot it in camera, I looked at the back of the camera to see the curve, and I knew that it was within tolerances where I could control it in Lightroom. So once you apply the background exposure changes, you get this, and the subject really pops out, which is how I visualized it. You can see I did several things here with the exposure, with the sliders. Again, this is something you're going to do to taste, but you have to visualize when you shoot what you can and will do in post. Okay, it's only at this point, when you have chosen your very best images, when you've got them cropped the way you like them, when you've got contrast managed the way you want it, and you've got subject and background exposure controlled exactly how you want it, that you should even consider retouch. For me, at this point, retouching means anything to do with the skin or things like that, or special graphical effects. I don't know what you'd call it, like reducing shine or stray hairs or anything like that. For me, that's all in Photoshop, probably for you too. And at this point is when you would export them to Photoshop. Here's a little bit of a bonus for you. In Photoshop, I have several tools I use to deal with these processes. They are my right hand. This is not a sponsored video. I'm not even making affiliate money off of the links to these tools. These are my just daily driver tools. So let me go over them really quick. The first one, and it's really kind of a lifesaver in terms of how if you use it right, is I don't know how to say this word, imagomic, I don't know how to say it, portraiture. And I'll have links to these in the comments, but what this does is you tell it the brightest part and the darkest part of skin, and it will do an initial smoothing of the skin. It's not gonna look like Barbie. It really is just, it's very subtle, and you can control how much it does. The next tool I use with a lot of pre-done recipes is the Nik Color Effects for tool set. There is a lot of tools in here. I have a lot of presets. I have many different things I do with this. That is a multiple video discussion. Again, let me know in the comments if you're interested in hearing more about this. This handles, again, more dealing with micro contrast, vignettes, tones, all those kind of things that are beyond basic exposure changes. I also use the silver effects if I'm working in black and white. Silver effects with a lot of presets that I use in silver effects to get the look I want for black and white. Okay, this was a very fast overview. I told you at the beginning of the video, I am happy to deep dive into any one of these, but while it may be a quick process to implement once you know it, learning it has been trial and error for quite some time for me. So Again, in the comments, let me know if there's any one of these you'd like to see a video on, or visit my consulting page if you want some one-on-one time to really know what I do with each one of these steps. Once again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you got something out of this video. Until the next video, cheers.